Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This is the place where pensioners are raped and the hearts are being cut from the welfare state. And the poor drink the milk while the rich eat the honey. Let the bums count their blessings while they count the money.
A member of the studio audience on last night's BBC Question Time programme has accused the Prime Minister of failing on the promise he made during the election not to cut tax credits. Michelle Dorrell has been speaking about why she confronted the Energy Secretary Amber Rudd on last night's programme over the government's changes. Our political correspondent Carol Walker has more.
Question Time, and a moment when the politicians and pundits were confronted by a very personal story.
You can talk about the chaos of the Labour Party, but the real threat is to our economic security.
They were talking about Labour's economic policies, but Michelle Dorrell, who'd voted Conservative, intervened with a heartfelt question about the government's cuts to tax credits.
OK, I voted Conservatives originally because I thought you were going to be the better chance for me and my children. You're about to cut tax credits after promising you wouldn't. I work bloody hard for my money to provide for my children, to give them everything they've got, and you're going to take it away from me and them. I can hardly afford the rent I have to pay. I can hardly afford the bills I've got to do, and you're going to take more from me.
All right.
Shame on you!
Right, I think there are a couple of things that we need to address that Liam's kind of tried to gloss over. I mean, David Cameron lied. You lied. There's almost 14,000 households in Brent that would be affected by this change. And
Sorry, what did David Cameron lie about?
Lied about taking away people's tax credits. He said he would not touch tax credits, and yet still you're doing just that. So you lied to the electorate, and I think that's important because on the House, on the floor of the House, I'm not allowed to say that because, you know, we have to have parliamentary language. But on your show, I can say it as it is.
And you have.
And I have done.
She's a single mother with 4 children who runs a manicure business and does not know how she'll cope if the £243 she receives each week in child tax credits is reduced.
It's my lifeline. And without that, I will sink. Without the tax credits, which does give me the ability to make sure there's food on the plate, to pay that top up onto my council tax and for my housing.
In the Commons earlier this week, the Prime Minister defended the changes, claiming the cost of tax credits has soared whilst failing to reduce poverty.
The system of taking money away from people and giving it back to them in tax credits wasn't working. We say it's better to let people earn more and then take less from them in taxes.
Well, let's move on now to a controversial area here at the conference, and that's the issue of cuts to tax credits. Some Conservative MPs really would like the Chancellor to look at it again. I've been speaking to Paul Johnson, the director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and asked him what impact he thought these changes are going to have.
It's very clear that the average family currently receiving tax credits will be significantly worse off, even after you take account of the introduction of the higher national minimum wage.
And which particular earners are going to be affected? Is it people on the minimum wage or people earning a little bit more than that?
There are different groups of people on tax credits at the moment. Quite a lot of them are on the minimum wage, but actually quite a lot are earning more than the minimum wage, in particular if they're working relatively short hours or if they have several children. There's not actually an enormously close overlap between those on the minimum wage and those on tax credits. So the gainers from the minimum wage are a very different group on average to the people losing from tax credits.
What David Cameron told Andrew Marr yesterday was that if you take a family where someone's on the minimum wage, when you take into account all the things we're changing in tax, in the national living wage and tax credits, that family will be better off.
Of course, it depends on their particular circumstances. That will be true for some, but actually for the majority, if they're on tax credits, that won't be true.
So overall, is it possible to say how many winners and how many losers there are likely to be?
The large majority of people on low incomes on tax credits will be worse off. Pretty much everyone of working age who's out of work will be worse off. If you're not on tax credits, then you're going to gain a bit from the increases in the personal allowance and some other relatively small tax cuts. So if you're not on tax credits, a lot of people in that situation will be getting better off. But for those towards the bottom of the distribution, they're clearly worse off.
But on his Facebook page, the Labour leader claimed David Cameron was unaware of the effect of his policy.
It's got to be stopped. We're opposing it just as much as we're opposing the government's whole economic austerity agenda, which is hitting the poorest and most vulnerable in this country.
Some Conservative MPs are also unhappy about cuts which will hit working families, and the government will come under further pressure to think again in an Opposition Day debate this week. But so far, ministers have rejected suggestions they might back down or find ways of softening the blow. Carol Walker, BBC News, Westminster.
Our first question comes from Jenny Johnson, please. Jenny Johnson.
Will you put to bed rumours that you plan to cut child tax credit and restrict child benefit to 2 children?
Well, thank you, Jenny, for that question. No, I don't want to do that. This report that was out today is something I rejected at the time as Prime Minister, and I reject it again today.
Sorry, you said you didn't want to put to bed the rumours that you were going to cut child tax credits. You meant you did want to put to bed the rumour.
Yes, we have increased child tax credits. Actually, we increased them by £452 under this government, because I was determined that while we had to take difficult decisions, and we were left an absolute nightmare situation to clear up, I wanted to make sure that child poverty continued to fall, and it has fallen under this government because of what we did with child tax credits.
That's a guarantee that you won't. Does anybody want to come in on this? Is that... Yes, you sir up there at the back.
I'm sorry, but I just think you're either deceiving the British public or you know exactly what you're going to do, but you're refusing to give specifics. And I find that very, very difficult.
Let me answer that.
Very difficult to understand. And how can I possibly vote for you on that basis?
Well, let me answer that very directly. In the last Parliament, we saved £20 billion on welfare, and we need to save something like half that in this Parliament. But we can reduce welfare. If, for instance, we get another 2 million people back to work, that will cut the welfare bills.
David Cameron, can you just come back to the question that the man here asked, that either you don't know what you're going to do, you've specified getting people back to work, or you do know and you're hiding it. You know, Dalia Alexander today said you'd asked 2 years ago for a thing which included massive cuts in child benefit. Clearly there are some people who are worried that you have a plan to cut child credit and tax credits. Are you saying absolutely as a guarantee
to me,
that
child
you'd never
benefit,
happen?
First of all, child tax credit we increased by £450.
And it's not going to fall.
Not going to fall. Not going to fall. Not going to fall. Not going to fall. Not going to fall. Not going to fall. Not going to fall.
So many people can express what's on their minds. Nobody knows them. Nobody ever will until their backs are broken, their dreams are stolen, and they can't get what they want. Then they're gonna get angry. Well, it ain't written in the papers, but it's written on the walls. The way this...
Let me bring a couple more people in. The woman there, and then I'll come to you.
If things are so fantastic and we've all got more money to spend, why are more families relying on food banks, and why are more people and more children in poverty than ever before?
Do you want to come in, and I'll come to you, and then we'll go on. Yes.
You talk about the sort of country you want to hand on to our children. I don't want to hand on a country to my child where there are 1 million using food banks, where people have been hit by really punitive benefit sanctions. People have died. You know, from the bedroom tax. We've got cases where people have a disabled, a woman has had a disabled daughter die and then receive a demand for bedroom tax for the spare room that disabled daughter has left behind. That is not a country I want to hand on to my child.
Here comes another winter of long shadows and highs. Here comes another winter, waiting for utopia, waiting for hell.